Magic Live is back. This time I'm going to be featuring Blue-Red Gifts Storm. Now if you're new to the channel, please start by hitting the subscribe button, and that might sound extremely cliche, but it helps a lot more than I think people will give it credit for, and we're trying to hit a certain goal that we can run polls on which decks to play. The Magic Live series is just me recording my play in tournaments. It's just that simple. So this time I'm not going to do a deck tech. I'm going to try something a little different. I'll be listing the deck in the description. But I wanted to feature a card from the current set, Adventures in the Forgotten Realm. And I'm going to be playing Blue-Red Gift Storm with the card Wish. Gift Storm's been around for a while, and it's really the same deck that uses a Wish board. It's really that straightforward. So I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm just going to get straight to round one. Okay, in round one, I will be on the right side here, and I believe I'm on the draw. And I'm a little bit behind on these, so it's not quite as fresh in my mind to immediately remember what my first round opponent is playing. And I threw the deck together very quickly because I was excited to play with the new card. And the Wish board involves a lot of singletons, like one silver bullet cards for certain situations. And that's what makes it so powerful. It's like an extension of your deck. Like every time you draw a Wish card, this one card represents many cards in your sideboard. And that's how toolboxes have worked in Magic for a long time. Usually it's not a Wish card. The historic wishes like Living Wish and Burning Wish and stuff like that. But sometimes they are. But it could just be something that searches for something in your deck. So that one card represents many cards in your deck. What makes Wish cards cool, in my opinion, is that it's that same toolbox feel and flavor, but it goes outside of your deck. So your deck gets like these extra slots without actually increasing the cards in your deck and reducing its consistency. So that's what makes Wish cards powerful. But with that in mind, I put together pretty fast, and I got a core of a lot of Wish cards I wanted, but as soon as I started playing the tournament, I immediately realized there's a lot of changes I wanted to make. So when you're seeing the list, you're probably thinking, oh, okay, you should have had this card here, and you're right. And I actually want to play this deck again kind of soon because I want to make those corrections. But one of the things I was most excited about with Wish was playing Blood Moon. Basically being able to have Blood Moon game one without actually having it in the deck. But our opponent on play had turn 2 Chalice on 1, which is very strong, so I run out my opt before it's obsolete. But even though Chalice on 1 is good, Chalice on 2 is the more important card. So I just drop Baral and be like, your turn. Can you kill it? And when your opponent goes Baral go, if you don't have an answer, it's pretty scary, you know, just in Modern's past. They turn 3 kill fairly consistently with an unchecked cost-reducing creature like Baral or Goblin Electromancer. Now, I don't remember if that's what happens this game, and also, the quality won't be quite as good. I don't remember exactly what happened with the lighting, but yeah, we're going to make improvements as we go along as I keep learning things with the recordings. Most of the stuff's pretty fast. If I remember, though, I think our opponent is playing either like Esper Control, like the Waffotopoulos that plays Chalice, or it might be like an Esper Reanimator Control that plays Persist packages. But he does take out Baral with Prismatic Ending, which is maybe the premier removal spell at the moment. There's some arguments to be made for Unholy Heat, but I think I'm seeing more Prismatic Ending. But I just fire right back, got another guy. And although there are certain hands that could have actually still won this turn, it would have had to basically be perfect, involving like 3 rituals, 2 Manamorphose, and a Gifts or something like that. And one of the things I was unsure of is whether or not I still wanted to run 4 Gifts in the main board, or I saw a few lists running a 3-1 split. You play 3 in the main board, 1 in the sideboard, so your wishes basically count as a Gifts. And that adds mana to your Storm turn. But I decided to do that because it opened up so many slots, and I really wanted to play Solve the Equation, which is another newer card from Strixhaven. So I really wanted to feature a lot of these new cards, and I wasn't that disappointed in those cards. Most of the, if I remember right, the games I lost involved like not having certain cards in the Wish board I planned on putting in and just I guess didn't. This is really good here. He's playing Collective Brutality, which is always good, but I'm curious why he's not escalating. That would be like perfect, right? Kill Goblin Electromancer and then take a key card out of your hand. But maybe he already has enough answers in his hand, it doesn't matter. But this is seeming pretty good. I do reveal Solve the Equation, Pass in Flames, and Manamorphose. He takes the Manamorphose, which is probably correct. It gets the most power out of costing one less. But you know, it's not entirely obvious that Storm is losing this game, because while it might seem like it, you know, I don't have rituals in my hand to go off. The opponent's not putting a very fast clock, and Storm can just, you know, win the game with the right card. However, Storm is not a one-card combo. It is very much a many cards combo. And I personally enjoy one-card combos, whether you call it a combo or just like a ramp deck into a big spell, whatever it might be, where you play one card that's just so overwhelming or wins the game on the spot. But here we have Unmarked Grave. He's going to set up his Archon for next turn. Archon would probably be game over. I don't really foresee winning through an Archon. I do suppose if I have like creature into ritual go off in one turn, that could work, but Archon can't, like, he can't untap with it and attack me, then that would just be the game. So if I could stack the deck here, what would be the best top deck to win this turn as a Storm player? I guess just running Manamorphoses, right? So like Manamorphose and Ritual, and that'd probably win the game. The good news, however, if I feel like I can't win the game this turn, if I'm looking at my card, I'm like, okay, he's got I just have to assume Archon's coming next turn. I do have Baral, so he won't kill both of them. I can maybe untap and draw the right card. I have Pass in Flames to discard, to the discard ability. So it's not like worst case scenario. I just can't let him untap and attack and continue it. Archon Titan is what we're going to call him. But I'm trying to remember, do I just draw the Manamorphose here? That was definitely pretty awesome. And if I did draw Manamorphose or Ritual, do I play Baral first? It doesn't net more mana off ritual effects, but it does reduce the cost of the payoffs. So does that 2 mana from Baral, casting Baral, is that made up for by its reduction? I would have to cast at least 3 payoff spells, I think, for it to be. So I guess that's what I do. I did draw Ritual, which wasn't Manamorphose, but you know, it does a thing. So Ritual would add 3 red, and Solve the Equation would cost 1 blue, so I could pay blue, cast Solve the Equation, get another Ritual into Pass in Flames. That might actually do it. Solve the Equation is pretty strong. Now I'm only playing 1. I'm open to playing more, but it's not clear what I'm cutting. A lot of people are telling me that Remand's not so great anymore, and they're probably right, because it is like my side out. It's like my package to take out. So I could cut that. There are a handful of things. But no, it looks like I'm just going to go for Pass in Flames for 2 mana, which also works. Solve the Equation can be a Gifts Ungiven, I suppose. But this works too. So I should be at 0 red. So I go to 2 blue. Yeah, that does work, because I still have a red from my lands. So I cast Desperate Ritual, and I'm at 3 red, 2 blue, and 5 spells. This is one of the fun / annoying parts of Storm, is keeping track of it, both for your opponent's sake and for, you know, visual sake. And it's easy to miss that. And usually, at least in my experience, your opponents are kind and will help you. Like sometimes they'll keep track of your Storm or one of your manas, and hey, you forgot one. My opponents have always been pretty courteous on that and helping you keep track of your big Storm turn. And I think this is fairly deterministic, actually, because if this finds Gifts Ungiven, Gifts Ungiven finds we're calling it Old Faithful. You know, you've got Desperate Ritual, Pyretic Ritual, Manamorphose, Pass in Flames. I don't really need the Pass in Flames anymore, so maybe I find a Grapeshot, maybe I find a Wish. It could go either way. But I'm sitting here thinking, I'm looking at his lands, and I'm like, okay, it's a 3-color deck. I have 4 mana. My spells cost 2 less. I could Wish into Blood Moon here. Would that be enough to win the game? I hope so, because that would be a really cool opening for this deck. And I think that's what I consider. I don't really remember if I do it. I think I do it at least at some point in this tournament. I'm really kind of hoping it's this game 1, because that would just really showcase the power of Wish. Oh, we're doing it. Wish costs a single red, which will put me down to 2 red and a blue, which is exactly enough to play the Blood Moon. Now, whether it's correct to do this and reveal it is debatable. I mean, I could have got Gifts Ungiven and gone off that way. I had plenty of resources to do it, but I decided, you know what? We're going for it. I got a basic island. We're good. And it's not guaranteed that Blood Moon can win other games in this matchup. And I see that here he has no basic lands. He's unlikely to be able to fetch for them. So that's the decision I make, and I think it ends up winning me the game. But I am out of cards. I do have a Pass and Flames in my graveyard with a Wish, so I have other things I can do. And he just passes the turn. It's just nothing. He could still have Force Negation, I guess, but that's about it. We're bringing the beats. Who's the beat down? That's right. Baral is the beat down. But 3 damage, that's 4 turns. And if I can find like a single payoff spell at 3 turns that shaves a turn off, I could actually do things now. Pass and Flames flashback is 3 mana, and everything else is 1. So that I would still have 2 mana left over. I don't have any rituals though, so like a single ritual would probably be enough. Both Wish and Solve the Equation are payoffs. Okay, yeah, I should be able to win this turn then. I could just like do this up into a Grapeshot and win the game. So it looks like we're winning on all axes. We're winning on new tech cards and Wish sideboard tech. We're winning on having another Storm turn. Pretty sweet. So I go Ritual into Pass and Flames, which gives the Ritual flashback, and then Wish can get anything. It can get I get anything. The cool thing about Solve the Equation, it can be another Ritual or a Manamorphose. But the cards that these get won't have flashback. I decided to just get Gifts Ungiven. And yes, this is the I'm trying to remember which version it is. The Jace, I don't know if it was Secret Lair or something. The Jace Vault, I don't remember what it's called. It was like some supplemental product that was a bunch of reprints that featured new art with Jace, like Brainstorm, Mystical Tutor, and stuff like that. But anyway, so I get Gifts Ungiven. Gifts Ungiven finds Old Faithful probably, or at least 3/4 of Old Faithful. And what's interesting, I'm thinking through the vast majority of times I cast Gifts, both in this tournament and just the majority of times I've played this deck, it gets Old Faithful. And I played a lot of like singleton packages in order to get them with Gifts Ungiven. Yeah, he just scoops. He knows how Old Faithful works, so he just scoops it on up. So we're gonna try to fast forward to game 2 here, and I was able to win that on the draw, which is pretty nice. But anyway, cards like Echoing Truth, stuff like that, I very rarely would get them. And I used to play a copy of the Jigzebs. I'm like, okay, here's my like Storm cards. The Mountain and Island just represent floating red and blue mana, and then that's a Storm Crow token to track my storm. So it's just something that visually represent it. But anyway, I played a single copy of Merchant Scroll, 1 in a blue. Search your library for a blue instant and put it in your hand. It's a sorcery. It's a fine card. It was kind of it was basically just Gifts Ungiven number 5, and could be like an Echoing Truth or a Repeal or something like that. So that was an easy swap for Solve the Equation. Solve the Equation's much stronger than that card, I think. Even though it costs 1 more, it can get red cards and it can get sorceries, so it's much stronger. And I think the fundamental strategy and execution of the Storm deck is the same, even though Wish just adds a much stronger element and there's way more payoffs, which sometimes was a problem with Storm. You'd have all the fluff that you need, all the rituals and the creature, but you need a payoff card, and if you either didn't find the payoff card, or they thought Siege a payoff card, or they have counters, like some way to stop you, Storm would lose. Now, given that, it is surprisingly resilient. Because usually the payoff card was just Gifts Ungiven or one of the 2 Pass and Flames. But with 4 Wish, it's just so good. I just like Wish is either just a payoff card or it can be an answer that you need to a problematic card in play. Alright, so we have another Collective Brutality, which is, I really like this card. And I reveal no lands. Let's see, we've got, let's see if I can get a good view here. Serum Vision, Baral, Ritual, Remand, Wish, and I think it's another Remand. Maybe another Baral. But he does take Serum Vision because I bricked on a land and I bottomed both of my cards. And I actually think I remember this moment. He's like, how did you do your scry again? I was like, it was bottom. And so, you know, as soon as he thought something, I'm like, yeah, he's going to take this. I still think my keep was decent. Oh, we got there. Better lucky than good. So I dropped the Baral and I'm like, this needs to die or you're just dead. You're dead next turn if this is still alive. And it is resilient to Collective Brutality, unlike the Goblin, but again he has Ubiquitous Answer, Prismatic Ending doing some work. I'll hit another land. Okay, so that must mean my card is not Baral number 2. It must have been Remand number 2. So I think I pretty clearly run the Baral out there. Okay, so I drew some kind of cantrip. Sleight of Hand, not a bad top deck. I really thought that was another Baral, you know, because my remands are foil, and that card doesn't look like a foil, the card on the very end there. But it's okay, we'll find out. It's possible it is a Baral, and I'm just wanting to wait until I can go off in a single turn to avoid sorcery speed removal. But he tries to draw 2 cards on my instep with an Archmage's Charm, and I'm like, this is good. I just need to I just want to cash this remand in. And just I was literally going to counter any spell he played that as long as he couldn't replay it again on the instep. I decided to get second Island, just in case I feel like going for Blood Moon again. This 3-color Esper deck my opponent is playing doesn't look very strong against Blood Moon, as we saw in Game 1. But he's putting up a fight this time. You know, he has 2 answer cards, although those are the same 2 answer cards he played Game 1, and he had a Chalice, and we were still able to get there. And of course, if you're saying, you know, you didn't need to reveal Blood Moon on Game 1, you're probably right. But it's obvious that Wish is a payoff card. So if I cast a Wish, he's unlikely to be like, okay, that resolves, and then counter the next thing. I'll probably just stop the Wish if he can counter a spell. Okay, I found another Ritual from my last couple draws, and I don't know if I found a land, but I think I found a creature, so I'm just probably going to run it out, make him answer it again. Worst case scenario is I drop a creature, like a Electromancer or something, and then he goes Grave Persist, Archon, and Archon kills. Like, that'd be like worst case scenario. Probably just can't win the game. Void Snare is pretty sweet. That's another one of the Wish targets. So even if he does, I can be like, Wish, Void Snare your Archon back to your hand, which is one of the I don't want to say weaknesses, but it's one of the drawbacks of a Reanimator deck, is if they can return it to your hand, your big creatures are like 8 mana and you can't really cast them. Okay, we've got a Fairy Time Reveler, which is actually not really a big deal. The only thing it stops is Remand, which is whatever. I probably only have like 2 remands or something. It does not stop Storm. It's not a spell. Alright, can we win the game? He's got 1 mana, so he could be representing some kind of piece of interaction plus Force Negation. I think I'm going to just go for it here, though. I would have to have access to Manamorphose or blue mana, an extra blue mana. But I'm just going for it. Maybe I go for Empty the Warrens here. That's another really cool thing about Wish. You don't have to play Empty the Warrens in your actual deck. And you only have to play 1 copy of Grapeshot. But yeah, this is a... Yeah, I could see a case for my opponent wanting to counter this, because I'm tapped out. I haven't played it. I do have 1 unknown card, at least 1. Might be 2. But whether or not my opponent wants to interact with this is it's not obvious. Like, maybe you wait for the payoff, you know. But he decides to let it go through. I think going for Blood Moon again is definitely reasonable. But if my opponent can counter the Blood Moon and it makes me waste my resources, that'd be pretty smart, and it might be a little naive from me. So if it turns out I resolve Wish, I think casting Empty the Warrens is much better, because a counterspell is not very good against a Storm card. Okay, so I do have Manamorphose. So even if he can counter this Manamorphose here, I think we're good, because Path and Flames can at least give me access to blue mana. But this Storm turn is looking good. It's looking like it can win. He does keep stopping me, asking questions. So he's at least representing some kind of interaction. Could be graveyard removal, could be a counter spell like Force of Negation. And I have to think to myself, okay, if he has this kind of interaction, what's my play? And that's kind of where Storm can get a little complicated. But honestly, the actual Storm turn isn't as hard as I don't want to see people make. A lot of people say it's not as hard as it seems like it should be, because it's true. With Gifts Ungiven and like a cost reducer, usually your Storm turn is actually deterministic. Like it will kill them with no interaction. So navigating, okay, rituals, Passive Flames, all this stuff, that's actually not the hard part with Storm. Playing the skill parts of Storm is mulligans, sideboarding, which sideboarding not so much anymore with Wish, and your cantripping. And the cantripping isn't all that hard. Sometimes it's obvious you're either looking for a land, you're looking for a creature, you're looking for more rituals, something like that, payoff card. But sometimes navigating that with their disruption, that's where the choices are more impactful. And then turns like this, where it's not the fact that I'm going off with the Storm turn, that's not the hard part. It's like I can maybe still win through his interaction if I predict accurately what kind of interaction at what point he'll use it. And that's obviously, there's so many layers there that I probably couldn't do a full analysis of that here. But I decided to go ahead and cast Solve the Equation here. My opponent's probably thinking I have so many copies of this. I think that's the only copy. But I cast it with, I saw 5 mana floating, 2 unknown cards in my hand, and a Wish. So I have a lot of gas left. And I think I did it on purpose, trying to see or bait out something. So if he has like some kind of graveyard interaction, Wish can still do something. If he has, there's just so many options here. But it looks like it resolves. And it's very likely, and I think this to myself, my opponent's just bluffing. But he's bluffing very well, I have to admit. Like the way he stops me at the certain times, he's doing a good job of it. And somewhat you could argue that it doesn't make a big difference, these kind of bluffs, and maybe a lot of the time that's true. But even if I make a single different decision based on how he presents himself, there's playing to your outs, whatever that margin might be, even if it's small, can be correct. And that's one of the interesting things, and one of the things I really enjoy about playing live versus on Magic Online. There's not as much you can do. Magic Online is just like, do I click a few extra seconds later? But in person, you can have facial expressions and different tones and the way you hold your cards. There's just so many things. I'm not even scratching the surface on how many of those things. I decided to just, he let it resolve, so I just get another Manamorphose. And I think I'm going to try to go for a Grapeshot kill here, and this actually might be incorrect. Another thing to consider is that my opponent is letting me do all of this instead of just conceding the game. So that actually suggests he might have something. So I go ahead and cast the Wish. Seemingly my last piece of gas, and there it is, Force of Negation. So he has the counterspell. He had it the whole time. So whatever he was doing was working in terms of the way he presented himself with his piece of interaction. And I may just brick here. Now whether or not I still win this game, I'm not sure, but I think all of those factors that I mentioned before, and how, like, okay, am I trying to call his bluff? Am I, how do I want to do this? Okay, it looks like I just have another card. So I Wish again, and it looks like this one resolves. But I don't have enough mana to get Blood Moon. I actually don't have enough mana to get Empty the Warrens either. Empty the Warrens would cost 3. So I can't get Passive Flames. I'm actually I can get basically Grapeshot. And Grapeshot would only deal 12 damage, which is a decent amount. So I could like take out Teferi, deal 12 to him, and maybe try to scrap together 5 more damage somehow. Now if you actually, maybe it's not that bad. What I was going to say is the correct decision was to go for Empty the Warrens earlier, but I guess there was no real window to do that, because he countered the first Wish. That was Solve the Equation, and Empty the Warrens isn't actually in the deck. So maybe I'm thinking about it wrong, but either way. I'm looking at my sideboard, just seeing what I can get, and it's got to be Grapeshot with how high my Storm is. So I have Storms at 11. We're double checking the Storm count here. I don't hate Grapeshot here, but it's not like amazing. It's not my first choice. Okay, looks like it'll be 13. So 13 damage. It's either way, it's not lethal. He'll be at 4 life, so you know, plenty of life to bring him back. And if he resolves an Archon, he starts gaining life. I'm guessing my last card doesn't really do anything. Okay, so I just get the Grapeshot. And whether I point one at Teferi and the rest of him, or point all at him and attack Teferi, I think either way it's pretty much the same. It probably would be better to point one at Teferi and then attack him. Or no, wait, I think I played the Baral this turn, so he's only going to take 12 damage. Or 11 damage. I don't know. He took 11 damage, whatever. So we're saying the total damage was 12 and the storm was 11 at the time I cast it. Yeah, we're discussing it. I'm like, it's unlikely to matter. I don't remember very freshly because this was actually several weeks ago. But even with all of that, I still like my position. Even though I am out of gas, though. I don't think there's a Pass of Flames in my graveyard. He finds basic island. He's respecting the moon. Respect the moon. However, I don't think one basic island is enough in his 3-color Reanimator deck. Okay, so he's playing Drown and Lock. He's like, I don't want to lose to a sweet top deck. Although at this point, I don't need a Baral in play to kill 6 damage worth of a storm turn. Alright, casting Opt, main, you know, there's no reason not to main phase it here. I don't think I could find Wish, which could find something. I don't think I found anything. It's good. Like, I'm leaving it 4 mana as if I could instep Gifts Ungiven. Cast Thirst for Knowledge on my instep, which is interesting. You know, this card doesn't see that much play. I actually really like this card, but I don't, you know, there's not really a home for it. The only decks that kind of played it were like Blue Tron, which aren't real decks. Not trying to offend anybody, but you know, they're not like considered like a high tier modern deck. They're just usually pet decks that people enjoy playing. But that's not to say they can't win, and it can feel a certain way when you lose to one. So now he's representing another basic land with his Flooded Strand. So I think I'm off of Blood Moon. I don't want a Blood Moon anymore. Counterspell on an instep, Gifts Ungiven, lots of respect. Like any payoff card is just so threatening here. I think I found a creature. Nope, I find Manamorphose. So yeah, just run it out there. I'm just like, okay, Manamorphose, let's go. Our opponent is doing a good job at answering what we're doing, but they're not presenting their own threat. And you know, the more time I get, the more likely I'm going to find a way to deal 6 damage. But I found something. Okay, so I'm just running my cards out because like every turn I pass, I give him a chance to find a threat or another counterspell of some kind. So there's really no reason to sit on my cards. Or I shouldn't say there's no reason. You could argue to try to build up another big storm turn, but I don't like it as much with how low his life total is. Like, I don't need a big storm turn to deal 6 damage. But I don't find it, just another land. Pass and Flames is probably just my best top deck, because he can counter like the first half, unless it's Force Engagement. He can counter the first half, I can untap, cast second half, and try and go off from there or something. Although, spending 5 mana on a flashback Pass and Flames with 1 mana left over, and there's no Baral in play, that's not very good. So I need to think, if I stack my deck, what would I put? Do I put a Wish? Do I put Gifts Ungiven? It's not very obvious. Pass and Flames. Pass and Flames would be good if the front half resolves. So I found something for 2. Nope. Okay. We found a B. He just attacks, you know. That's 3 attack steps and he's dead. It's so awkward when you have to leave your removal spells in for the Storm deck, you know, because we usually, historically, Storm was more of a legacy deck, and you think, oh, I take my removal spells out, then they bring in Xantid Swarm and beat you. So here he Snapcasters and flashes back Thirst for Knowledge instead of using an answer, which is bad for me probably, because look, he finds Archon there and he almost certainly has Persist. I would probably just scoop to a Persist here, or any kind of reanimation. Yep, there we go. I don't actually scoop, but he gains the life, and that makes it much harder to win. I do think Empty the Warrens would be still potentially winnable. But I'm still playing. We're still kicking. But yeah, as it looks now, I would be moving the advantage bar far over to the Reanimator side, especially if he gets an attack off here and I have to discard that card. Yep. Yeah, I'm like, yeah, I got discard, right? I'm like, well, that's awkward. I probably just drew a Ritual or something I couldn't use. And once he gains life up to like, what, 11? Yeah, I drew a Ritual. So once he gains life to 11, is there any real feasible way to win this game? Even if I like just pass in flames, like off the top. Is that enough? Okay. It was not enough. So let's go on to game 3. Pretty good from our opponent. Had all the answers at the right time. Was patient with his answers, because it can be tempting to just counter that, solve the equation. But we're on the play this time, and I was able to sneak in a 1-drop under his Chalice, and I'll get another chance next turn. But let's hear it for Prismatic Ending. That card has been really, really efficient. Even though it feels like it's inefficient, you know, you're not going up on mana in your trade. You're losing tempo because it's a sorcery. You know, they spend mana, they play their card. You spend mana on your turn to answer it. Then they untap with their mana, and they get their turn ahead of you, basically. But it's brutal flexibility, just makes it so good. But he has Thoughtseize on turn 1, probably his best turn 1 opener. And my hand looks pretty good. It's not clear what you take here. Probably Manamorphose, I guess. It's the single strongest card. I don't see a mana creature, but there's 2 payoffs. I think that's a Remand, 2 rituals, and a Manamorphose. So yeah, he's seen it too. He's like, it's not super obvious, but you know, all else being equal, Manamorphose is probably the strongest card in the hand. It's blue mana for a big storm turn, but with Wish, you don't need blue mana as much anymore during your big storm turn. But he does decide that that's the best card to take in this early part of the game because there's 2 payoffs. I find Baral off the top, just such a huge luck sack. So definitely still threatening a potential win next turn. Not clear on exactly how I would do it. I could just wish into maybe Empty. I don't know if I have mana for that though. It'd be 3 to 5. Yeah, actually, I wouldn't be quite enough. And there's no blue mana to go Gifts Ungiven. So if I draw a blank here, well, no, that's not true because I'll untap all of an island. Yeah. So next turn, if he has nothing, okay. So he has a discard spell. Normally, I would like taking the payoff card, but since I have 2, maybe you just try to reduce my mana. Looks like he's not escalating it, or he is escalating it. No, he's not escalating it. So he takes Wish. Okay, so he takes a payoff card. I don't know, I think on board I might have the win. Here we go, Ritual, blue mana, Gifts Ungiven, get Old Faithful. I think that's enough to win. But let's see, I really don't remember. So 5 red, and Storm is at 2. What is my last card? Is it a Ritual? Does that solve the equation? Oh my god, of course it is. Solve the equation can just get like Manamorphose. That's just so good. Oh no, solve the equation costs 2. Actually, I could still do that. So I could just cast Gifts now, have 2 red left. No, have 3 red left. Get Old Faithful, and I think he loses. But is that what I do? It is. So almost certainly getting Pyretic Ritual, Desperate Ritual, Manamorphose, and Past in Flames. And with 3 floating red, it just doesn't matter what 2 cards he gives me, what 2 cards he puts in the graveyard, and that's the idea of Old Faithful. Because I'm getting at least, you know, if I get minimum mana, it's Manamorphose, Past in Flames, and Past in Flames only costs 4, which means it costs 3. If he gives me Ritual, and puts Manamorphose, Past in Flames graveyard, Past in Flames costs 5, but I go up 5 mana, and it actually only costs 4. So it's like there's just no There's no good way to do this here. And this will result in a lethal Grapeshot. Like, this can be looped enough times to result in a lethal Grapeshot. Now, he could have Force Negation, which really throws this whole thing out of whack. And that's one of the... I think it's one of the things that they intended Force Negation to do, is to help beat stuff like this kind of degenerate combo stuff. Because, you know, a long time ago, a whole 2 or 3 years ago, if you were Storm and your opponent was tapped out and you started doing this, you weren't afraid of anything. You know, all the 0 mana spells that could interact were usually just too inefficient to be good enough to play in Constructed. Not 100%, but most of the time. But Force Negation is not only not inefficient enough to not play in Constructed, but it's like straight up the force of will of Modern. And yeah, he's just kind of counting it up. He's like, you know, it doesn't matter what I give you. You're going to be able to cast that Pass in Flames, keep going up on mana, cast the Gifts again, do it all over again, get that Storm count high. Yeah, I mean, you're right. But he decides, I think he decides to play it out. Kind of let me have my fun. I'm trying to think, if I was in his position, what would I do? It does depend a little bit on what cards are in his hand. So I guess if I had Force Negation, I'd give me the rituals and make me spin the rituals, because that's probably what I would do. Spin the Pass in Flames, counter the Pass in Flames. I guess that's what I would do. But there's a good argument that he would have countered the Gifts Ungiven if he had anything. Maybe. It's not super obvious. It's hard to say. But we're really discussing it here. It's not obvious what's going on. So I think, yeah, he decides to do what I said there. I guess there's not as much reason to tank that long if he has Force Negation. But yeah, we're just going to play it out. You know, maybe he doesn't realize it's deterministic. Really don't remember if I win this or not. Like, if I go just completely uninterrupted here, I'm going to win. For sure. Whoa. Pretty slow. Might skip ahead just a little bit. Or he's stopping me. I think something's about to happen. Maybe there's a judge call. Nope. Okay, so we're continuing. So back up, gonna go to 5. Or sorry, 7. Go to 7. And yeah, there's really no reason not to go for Grapeshot here. There's just nothing you can do. I guess this is where I was like, oh, do you have it? Do you have it? But looks like he does not. So I'm just going crazy. We're gonna flashback all the rituals, make a gajillion mana. I've got at least 1, if not 2 Manamorphose. I got 2 Manamorphose, yeah, because he thought seized 1. So 2 Manamorphose. So that's at least 4 blue mana. So we got plenty of blue mana. I've got to solve the equation in my hand. Another Gifts Ungiven on flashback. And he's probably at like 19 or... Yeah, I think he's at 18 actually, because he thought seized. So he's at 18 life. That's like nothing. This is when Storm is fun. If you're piloting the Storm, this is the fun turn. And you know, you could say it's not very fun for your opponent because you're taking a really long turn, and that's probably got some truth to it. But you know, usually your opponent's vested in the game enough to like kind of watch what you're doing, and it's like, at least it's interesting for them. The downside is if your opponent isn't super familiar with Storm, they're thinking in their head that you might be able to break. But in this situation where it's a Gifts Ungiven, Pass in Flames, there's no way to break. I mean, assuming you don't make a mistake. But I think he's also keeping track of my Storm over there on this 20-sider. Just to make sure I don't mess it up. But it looks like I have my Storm at 11. 4 blue mana, 8 red mana. But yeah, these mechanical things of pulling your cards out, getting your mana right, getting your Storm right, is I don't want to say difficult, but it can be a little bit of a challenge to make sure you're being very precise in communicating and doing all of this. Okay, so we are getting flashback number 2. And whether or not it's just straight up Old Faithful again is a little debatable, because there's a lot of mana, so needing the rituals aren't as necessary. So you could get like Passive Flames, Wish, Grapeshot, Gifts Ungiven, or something like that. You could get some rituals, some combination. It looks like I got Grapeshot at least. But with this much mana, I think there's an argument that you don't need to get rituals anymore. Okay, I got Wish, Desperate Ritual, Manamorphose maybe is okay, and Grapeshot. So I don't think I like getting the 2 ritual effects here, actually. You know, in hindsight, I think I should have got... So he puts the 2... I mean, I've solved the equation in my hand, so I don't think any of this matters. I'm already at 11 or 12 Storm, and he's at 18. And I have 2 unknown cards. I wonder what those are. So I'm going to go down a red, up 2 blue. Ah, man. Manamorphose feels really dirty when you have a Baral in play. It feels like this card should not be legal. So right there, we're organizing which cards have flashback and which ones do not, because I didn't spend all of them, and I have new cards in the graveyard. So I cast Wish here, and I do have a Passive Flames in my Wish board. So that definitely, you know, it's cheaper than Gifts Ungiven, so there's an argument there. This is by no means the objectively correct line. There's so many options now with Wish. There may have been an easier route to getting the lethal storm count, but this gives the Grapeshot flashbacks. I don't have to find Grapeshot, and it's like, it's fine. And with Solve the Equation, I think he realizes it and scoops up his cards. So that was a good debut of the new Gift Storm. I think this is by no means the correct build, but I think the overall shell is pretty good, and I would definitely recommend this deck. But I'm gonna go ahead and jump on over to round 2, and if you just now tuned in for round 1, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Okay, so here for round 2, there was a little bit of a technical problem, and we're going to be starting on game 2. My matchup is actually against humans, which is traditionally the worst matchup, if not one of the worst matchups for Storm. There's just a lot of disruption and fast clock. That's usually the best thing you can do against Storm, like Jund, Death Shadow, humans. But humans especially, because of the way their disruption works. I did manage to win game 1. I actually had a relatively straightforward game of just Baral, untap, Old Faithful, win. He just didn't have the... I think he had an aggressive attacking hand, and he had lethal on his next turn, but I just had the Storm. I think that's how game 1 went, if I remember right. So we're going to start on game 2, and our opponent will be on the play because they lost game 1. And his opener is pretty strong here. Not quite their strongest opener. I think the strongest opener is still probably Aether Vial, but a turn 1 Noble Hierarch is about as good. And especially when you're on the play. Having a Serum Visions is probably also just the best turn 1 Storm can have. So both decks having their optimal turn 1. 1 mana spells are very strong, incredibly powerful. A lot of the times they're like the deciding factor of how like certain decks are constructed, because in constructed, speed is important, you know, especially the more powerful and larger the card pool. And that's what makes Chalice such a good card. But anyway, having a Meddling Mage on turn 2 is pretty good. Sometimes it's even lights out, but he misses his land drop, and with all of the new tech Wish offers, it's not so obvious that Meddling Mage will get the job done. Now, I don't remember what Meddling Mage names here. He might... I think he actually names Lightning Bolt. So if I remember correctly, we discuss it, and usually Storm, the traditional Storm, brings Lightning Bolt in, and it's like the only real spot removal. So it's a reasonable name. You know, the original name was actually Grapeshot, because a lot of decks, Grapeshot was the only really thing in their main board. But that's obviously not the case anymore, and we don't have Lightning Bolt, so not too worried about it. Not presenting a very fast clock. Oof, our opponent bricks on land again. Oh no, they don't. No, they don't. Never mind. Looked like a Mantis Rider. So he finds I believe that's Ancient Ziggurat, and now he has a clock. Okay, so he's actually doing something. Our opponent's putting some power in play. I don't think, if I remember right, I revealed Wish. I don't remember though. So I decide to opt in response to a second meddling mage just in case. I mean, it's the only card I can cast in my hand at that time. He probably names Gifts Ungiven or Grapeshot, but I don't know for sure. So we're going to find out. So one of these meddling mages matters, and I believe one does not. Now, I don't remember exactly, but I was trying to decide on what all wish cards to play. Like, what do I play in my sideboard? How many slots of my sideboard do I dedicate to bringing in, and how many do I dedicate just for being for wish? And I ended up, I think I had like four or so cards that were meant to be brought in. But there's just so many potential wish cards. I wasn't able to grab an Ignite Memories, which I really want to get. That can be a card that can win the game on a low storm turn with certain matchups, and not be Empty the Warrens. So like if you're in a context where Empty the Warrens won't do it, Grapeshot's not, you don't have a high enough storm, 8 storm maybe, Ignite Memories will usually kill someone. And I just like the card for its historic interest. So I didn't get that, and I like having not a lot of wish boards play this, but some kind of Pyroclasm effect. Pyroclasm, Anger of the Gods. It might be correct to play both, because there are contexts where mana matters, so that Pyroclasm only costs 2, and Baral has 3 toughness. So, like right here, Pyroclasm would be amazing. Now, if my opponent untaps and plays a creature, Pyroclasm is still very strong, but if he plays 2 creatures, which he's likely to do, that Champion of the Parish would survive, but the Pyroclasm would still clean up a lot of stuff. So I think next time I play, I'm going to probably do something like that. But anyway, so I might be just going for it here. Up to 4 mana, I've got some cards in my hand. If I have a payoff card, well, it depends on how many more rituals I have. Yeah, like certain payoff cards might determine which one I get. Empty the Warrens can still be really strong. If the if the humans player like next leveling, they would have Is It Staticaster to deal with Empty the Warrens. Because usually when you do a certain storm turn, whether it's Grapeshot or Empty the Warrens, you use all your resources, and then the storm card's supposed to win the game. So Empty the Warrens needs 1 or 2 attack steps to win. And so if I'm like, here's all my cards, Empty the Warrens, and they just play Is It Staticaster, I pretty much lose the game on the spot. So looks like I played a second cost reducer, Goblin Electromancer, and as long as I play at least 3, right? Yeah, I need to play at least 3 payoff spells for it to be worth it. So here's Wish. Wish could get Empty the Warrens here to be really strong, but I don't know if that's what I do. I'm at 7 storm, so it would be for 8 total, so that's 16 goblins. It's okay. Oh, no. I think, yeah, I just go for... I like doing this here. So Wish only costs 1. Gifts Ungiven only costs 2. So I think at this point, Old Faithful should be enough to win the game. So right here is where having only 3 Gifts Ungiven in your main board is working out, because my Wish represented 1. So I was able to get 1. It's like nothing really changed. That Wish in my hand was just a Gifts Ungiven. It cost a little bit more, but ultimately works out. So yeah, there's Old Faithful. Since I have 2 mana floating out, it doesn't really matter what he does. I am kind of curious what those last 2 cards in my hand are. Yeah, I'm explaining it to him like, yeah, Passing Flames cost 2 less, so there's really no combination of cards that you can put in the graveyard that will stop the... It's such a false hope. You know, the way the card works, I guess Ungiven says your opponent chooses the 2 cards that go in the graveyard, but it's like I select and construct my deck in a way where it doesn't matter what you choose, and that's the idea. Storm hasn't been seeing a lot of play recently. There's just a lot of good disruption, but Wish, while I think does revitalize the deck a bit, it might not be enough to actually push it over the top. It's just fun, you know. I wanted to feature the new card, and it's probably true that Twiddlestorm is the better Wish deck, but we'll maybe feature that some other day. So he makes his choice. I continue to have my mana and storm count, and this game is all but over. Because I'm pretty sure, I wouldn't say I'm certain, but I'm pretty sure Humans doesn't play Force of Negation. Pretty sure. Would be a pretty interesting blowout, or maybe if he had like right here, if he had Endurance. See what? How many green creatures does it? I guess Noble Hierarch's the only green creature, and the other Endurance, so that would be unlikely. I don't know if I tell them it's deterministic or not, but I mean, I think we just go through the motions. But just with what's in the graveyard there, it's plenty to deal 18 damage. So he plays turn 1, turn 2. Yeah, I think he's at 18. Actually, he might be at 17. Yeah, I think he's at 17 because he's used his Horizon land 3 times, right? Turn 1, Hierarch, turn 2, Meddling Mage, turn 3, Meddling Mage, and Champion. Yeah, so he's used it 3 times. 17 is very easy to get, considering I'm already at 14, and I still have all those cards left in my graveyard. And I'm actually going up on cards with these Manamorphose, which is crazy. A 3rd Manamorphose, oh jeez. I just had all the goodies here. Storm looking pretty strong if it can beat the worst matchup historically. But there's a lot of new archetypes, so it's not so clear. Like, I think the blue-red deck would put up a strong fight. Elementals seems like it'd be kind of difficult with all their 0 mana interaction. Yep, it's so this finds the Grapeshot plus whatever. I guess I could find. I saw Wish, so Wish just finds Grapeshot. But yeah, Storm, very fun deck to play. You know, I used to be on the fetchless Storm. A lot of it was because I didn't have Scalding Tarn. I didn't want to deal with it. It didn't really make a big difference. But Blood Moon is an interesting aspect to the Storm strategy. You know, some played it, some don't. I never played it, and it worked out fine for me. But with Wish, the power of Wish and Blood Moon is too strong. Like, you only have to play 1 Blood Moon in your 75. So there's really no good reason to be playing the fetchless version anymore. And if you're wanting to know about the difference between Giftstorm and Twiddlestorm, which I'll probably do a whole series and feature on Twiddlestorm, it's Blood Moon. So if you're looking for a reason to play, at least one reason, there might be other, to play this over Twiddlestorm, it's Blood Moon. But Twiddlestorm has plenty of its own advantages. But yeah, just keep the train going. Pretty sure I win this game. Let's see, what are we at here? We're at 17 right now, so he's at 18. I think he should be at 17, but we maybe just didn't update the life total. Probably gonna end up dealing more than that anyway. I'm making more mana, just getting the storm count higher, so I'm actually doing a splice. You know, Desperate Ritual having splice is not irrelevant. It comes up sometimes, and you actually go up on mana. You don't go up on spells, but you do go up on mana. Alright, Wish is probably finding Grapeshot here, which will be for probably 19. Oh, no, I think he's naming Grapeshot. So Wish finds Void Snare, and he scoops it up. Okay. Wish coming in clutch. So, yeah, I actually forgot for a second he had Meddling Mages out there. So one of them I think was on Grapeshot. And I'm like, I got these wishes, bro. Well, Storm looking pretty strong so far, but it can still be a little fragile, so let's see if we can keep it going. Alright, I do believe this matchup is against the Elementals deck. And I said a second ago, I think this might be one of the less good matchups of the new decks from Modern Horizons 2. Mainly because almost all of the Elementals in some way have, of the new Evoke ones, have a positive interaction against Storm, even though they're just dealing with creatures, because Storm has a difficult time going off with without your cost reducer like this Baral here. So if he goes like Instep Solitude, or if he plays what's the other one, Fury, that's pretty good. Even if he's 2-pointing himself, he's really buying himself a lot of time. And then there's Endurance. I guess the worst one, Grief's also good, but I don't think they play Grief. The worst one's probably Subtlety. But it's still not bad, if you're stopping their Baral turn 2 and they have to draw it again, and it's like time walking yourself. But the two main ones, the two good ones, Solitude and Fury, are so good. It being mana tempo positive, that's pretty in their favor. Now, if they end up having Ephemerate, oh, look at that. If they have Ephemerate, now they have a clock. And Ephemerate, if I remember right, the rebound effect is a May. So if you're like, I want to start my clock, you didn't play creatures, so I'm not going to rebound this. It's pretty reasonable. And that's probably what happens here. And I believe I was on the play, so that tempo advantage he gains by doing that is pretty high. So he attacks me for 3. His life going up is not irrelevant, although it's not super important because you can just have a little. It's not a lot of life at a time, 3 at a time, but it's not irrelevant. Sometimes you just stop at what their life total is, like maybe 1 or 2 over. Not because you can't keep going, but because you want to make it as efficient as possible. And you can't go forever. You can go really high, but eventually you attrition out of your rituals and stuff, passing flames. But I have the other cost reducer, so I'm like, you got to answer this one. Gonna do a thing. But here he could rebound and kill it, but maybe he has another answer in his hand and he wants to put a faster clock on, so he decides not to do it. Obviously, I'm not going to block. So what would he have here? Looks like he just has Prismatic Ending. Again, Prismatic Ending doing some work. Doing some work. Never dead. Jeez, I just have all the dudes. It's like, you can only have so many answers, right? Nope, I have all the answers. 3 Solitude. Oh, I guess that's fair, right? I have 3 mana reducers, he has 3 Solitude. The fact that he was able to keep Solitude is pretty good. Maybe he'll go all the way. But there are certain, there's different builds of elementals. You've got the just efficient Ephemerate kind, and there's even a couple different versions of that. You've got the Cascade version. So whichever version, I think they're both pretty bad. I guess the regular version might be a little worse because they have more answers, but they're also slower with their clock. So not obvious. Wouldn't want to play against either of them. I just kind of want to play against like a slow, not really slow, but like maybe a beatdown deck, some without much interaction. Or maybe a slower combo deck like, what's that? Ad Nauseam. Ad Nauseam seems like it's just slower, and their interaction's not very good. They're almost 2 turns slower, to be honest. They don't have Spirit Guide anymore. They did get Profane Tutor, which is decent. Alright, looks like I'm going to go for it. And I'm probably going to run into an Endurance or something crazy. But you can't really play around that, There's only so much you can do. That's not to say it's completely unwinnable, but I wouldn't say... I don't know, with Wish, I'm wondering if Humans is even... Oh yeah, so Humans can draw the right half of their deck, so if they go Thalia into Freebooter or something like that, that's pretty strong. And also, a well-timed and placed Meddling Mage can still be a problem. Even though it kind of didn't work out for our opponents. But I still think that deck is, overall, in terms of how its strategy works, not the best against Storm. Or not the best in terms of... It's bad for Storm, is what I'm saying. I don't remember for sure, but I actually think I end up losing this game. I think I take 3 more. I think somehow he stops me, like with an Endurance or something. And what's weird is I think I consider it. And with Endurance, it probably is correct to go for, like, Empty the Warrens or something. But that's not even guaranteed to win. I have 1 floating red. So it's not clear what I get here. This game's moving a little slower, so I'm probably in a tank much longer. Yeah, I think I just brick. So maybe he didn't. Yeah, so he didn't have Endurance. I couldn't generate enough mana to go off. So that was actually a brick turn, and he finds the Fury. So The good thing is he doesn't have Ephemerate, which is probably good because he would have to kill one of his own creatures, but Fury's a much faster clock. Although he's on a 2-turn clock right now, so I have 2 turns to assemble some kind of win. Interesting though, you know, I'm just like, I had to have the way my hands lined up. I needed the creatures. He had an answer for each creature. The big storm turn didn't work out. I may have made a mistake there. I wasn't really certain what the contents of the rest of my hand was. But I'm pretty sure I'll lose this game. I don't really see a path to victory. I would have to go exactly like creature into a chain of rituals right now to win this game. Yeah, pretty sure I lose. So I find the Baral, but no ritual. Baral could block, I guess, but there's no reason to block this turn because I have another turn. 32 life's a lot, though. So yeah, he just has another. Yeah, like the fact that his ephemerates are also answers. There's just so many answers, so it's unlikely to be victory. Although that does buy me another turn. No, it doesn't. Why did I go up on life? I'm supposed to go down on life. I'm supposed to be at 2. So I fetch. Manamorphose finds nothing, and I scoop it up. So game 1, our opponent misses their land drop and just deals 20 damage with a single Solitude. So sometimes that's just how it be. And there's his companion. We weren't able to see it on screen, but he did have a companion. So on the play for game 2, if I remember correctly, I think this is the game where I get blown out by Endurance. I decide to fetch shock. Overall, I don't think my life total is that important, and I don't think I had another. I think I have just islands in my hand, but I don't remember for sure. It's good that you can't turn 1 ephemerate your Fury when there's nothing in play. Fury just kill itself, and it's usually not great to do anyways, even if it kills something else. Like there has to be something else in play, at least enough to divide the damage so it doesn't die to its own ability. It's an interesting design with Fury. It's the only one that like has to hurt itself, but it's also the only one that can go up on cards. So I guess that's the idea there. Ren 6 not super impactful this game. I just played 3 cantrips over my first 2 turns. Teferi again, not super impactful, not really going to make a difference here. I find the mana creature, break it on my lands, which means I have all spells, and if I can untap with this creature, I feel like I'm likely to win the game. That's probably my mode here. Although I don't expect to untap with it, because I mean he just has Teferi can deal with it. And that's exactly what happens. Although Teferi's still... No. He's destroying it with something. Maybe I'm going too fast here. I think we ended up playing a little slow this game. He announced something. Because it looks like this here is the Electromancer. Maybe I should rewind it a sec. Okay, no, he casts Fury. And so he's downing the... he's just drawing a card. I think he's just wanting to make sure he has enough answers. I find a second Baral, and I think his graveyard's off on the other side. We can't see it. It looks like I'm going for it. So he has 3 mana open, so he could just cast the Endurance. Not that it would affect how I play, because Endurance can be cast for 0. So I'm going for it. I'm just like, if you have it, you have it. Sometimes that's just got to be the way it is. Sometimes you have to make them have it, and this isn't just Storm. It's true with any other combo deck or big turn deck. You got to either make them have it, or you have to, if your hand isn't guaranteed to go off, you have to just try, because giving them more time is worse. So you have to sort of calculate your odds, not in a literal sense where you're doing math on your calculator, but instinctually, like you have an instinctual grasp, like, okay, this seems like I'm more likely to find it than I am to survive him having more draw steps. And it does not always work, but in my experience at least, and that's all I can speak for, when I'm playing Storm and I have like a hand where I have some rituals, I don't have the payoff, but I might draw into it with whatever combination of cantrips I have. I just went for it, and it's worked out enough of the time to that I have enough experience to assess situations where it's worth trying to go off. And I'm not sure that that's the case here. This is the case where I think I have the resources to guarantee a win. He just might have an interaction spell, and so I'm making him have it. That's the first one. And of course, are there ways to play around it? Maybe a little bit, and whether or not I do correctly is debatable. Like here with Wish, maybe Wish I could have gotten something specific to play around a hate piece, and I think instead I end up just trying to go for the Grapeshot kill. So that action might have been incorrect. But in terms of making your opponent have it, if you try to play around it by passing the turn and waiting, you're just giving them more opportunities to find an answer if they didn't have it. And even if you're trying to find ways to answer their answer, I think a lot of the time, I don't want to say majority or even half, but a lot of the time, players play too conservatively, and it's better to just make your opponent have it. I think another reason to go for it here is he's not putting me under any pressure. So if he stops me, I have time to just try to find it again. But with all that in mind, it looked like I just had a lot of gas, and there were methods to play around an endurance. Like if I would have just got Empty the Warrens there, I don't know what he would have done. Yeah, like Empty the Warrens probably would have made like 12 or something tokens. Endurance won't stop it. I mean, it could block a couple. 2 or 3 attack steps and he's dead. So that may have been the correct line. Grapeshot definitely relies on Pass and Flames in the graveyard to continue its kill. So I cast Pass and Flames here, thinking I'm good to go. Still have 2 red floating. And there it is. I'm like, well, I think you got me. Gotta shuffle all that in. Pretty sure I just lose the game from here. So hit resolved. Some land shuffle. He just hard casts a Fury, which here he can do. He can just be like 2/2, my creatures survive, and he has a nice fast clock there. Or no, I thought of Baral, so he just kills Baral, which is better because now he has a fast clock and he dealt with my mana creature. I do find the other Baral, but I think it's too little too late. I don't have enough resources, and he wins pretty decisively. I think that game was definitely winnable. Had I just gone for... Oh, I think we discussed that. I was like, I should have gone for that. And he's like, well, I had an Endurance or a Fury in my hand. Fury takes out 4. He could actually like maybe bounce his own Fury back, play it again, or find Ephemerate. So maybe it wouldn't have mattered. But in round 3, I'm trying to remember what I play against. But I am on the play. So Serum Vision, best opener. I do think our opponent had discard spells, and I reveal an interesting hand. The only thing I'm missing is the land, so it seems like the obvious take here is the cantrip in Sleight of Hand. But there's only one payoff. There's also only one creature. So there's some debates you can be made. Creatures have other ways to deal with them. You could just use a removal spell. So yeah, I would say it's between the gifts and the cantrip, and taking the cantrip is good because it looks like I missed my land drop. So I just buys him a whole turn. And it's a Lurrus deck. I believe those are Blackcleave Cliffs. Yeah, I'm not good with these new frames. So I find a land and play Baral. But he has a Dothy Voidwalker. So that makes Pass and Flames not so great. That doesn't mean the game is unwinnable, but I am going to have to like think of a different way to go off. Finding Wish is definitely a thing I could try to do. I have 3 Manamorphose, so that's 3 new cards. Ragavan, not so worried about at this point in the game. Lightning Bolt, however, very strong. Very, very strong. It's probably that right there just might win the game. It's like now I gotta find a mana creature, and he's dealing 5 damage a turn. And he's got Disruption with Voidwalker. Not looking hot for the Storm player. Okay, find a cantrip. It's whatever. Probably looking for the mana creature at this point. It's like I at least have to have that to try to go off. So that opt is supposed to be under Voidwalker. Probably ends up just not mattering though. When Voidwalker's good, it is good. So I'm not sure where Ragavan went. Did I remand it? I don't know. Probably doesn't matter. Alright, so we have a Turok here, kicked. So, going to be discarding 2 at random, and his clock went up. Not sure what happened to Ragavan. Is he just off screen? I mean, there's the treasure. Let's see. Discarded 2 Manamorphose. Well, I guess the probability wasn't too low on those. Down to 8 already. Not looking so hot yet. This is a potential reason why Storm might not always be the best choice, because all these new cards have the right combination of disruption with their clocks. Oh, he dashed it. He dashed it. Gotta sometimes, you know, pay a little more attention. But I'm pretty sure I just lose here because he's got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 power. Yeah, so he wins game number 1. Oh no, actually, we had another malfunction. This was game 2, as you saw with the number 2 there, and he also beat me game 1 pretty much the same way. I think he just had like discard spell to Void Walker and killed my guy with a bolt. So that was actually game 2, and those are some of the cards he brought in. So ended up going 2-2, which isn't great, but I think some of it was matchup. I think I made some mistakes. This is a theme you're going to see. A lot of it ends up being mistakes, not just in gameplay, like play mistakes, but also deck construction, sideboard. I think this deck still has a lot of game, so I do recommend it, and I'm going to probably revisit this fairly soon, and I'm going to correct my wish board a little bit and see if it makes a difference. But anyways, thanks for tuning in. If you're still watching at this point for some reason, make sure to hit the subscribe button if you haven't, because we need to hit those goals. But anyway, we will see you next time on Magic Live.